So 28 Years Later is finally here. It's a movie that I've been looking forward to for a very, very long time. Ever since it was first announced, I was looking forward to this movie because I'm a huge fan of 28 Days Later and I rather enjoy 28 Weeks Later. And how does it hold up? Well, it was good, but it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I'm going to start off with the positives because there's a lot of really great things about this movie that I really loved and are definitely worth talking about. And there's some other things about this movie that I don't really like, but we'll get into that later. First off, the performances in this movie are honestly Oscar worthy. I love all of the performances in this movie. I don't think there was a single performance in this movie that I looked at and was just like, yeah, that one wasn't quite as good as that other one. It's like, no, it's like everyone is on the same playing field. Everyone got the job. They got what they had to do and they just nailed their performances. You can tell that the people in this world have like lived in this world for quite a while. It almost felt like I was watching like a series of real events. That's how convincing the performances was in this movie. Aaron Taylor-Johnson is given a very different type of performance in this movie. Typically he tends to play like more funner kind of roles. He tends to play like these really like kind of goofy kind of very like I don't know how to describe it, just kind of like these very goofy kind of light-hearted roles. But in this movie he's playing a bit of a darker role, which I actually really liked. He's playing like a more darker, more grounded role that I really liked and really dug, and it was something very different for him. And if he doesn't get nominated for something, it generally would kind of surprise me because he was actually really great in this movie. Jodie Comer was also fantastic in this movie. She was really great. I've never really seen anything that Jodie Comer's been in, so this was really my first impression of her. And what a first impression she left, because she was fantastic in this movie. You really bought into her performance. She gave a really emotional performance and just gave the type of performance that you could just really get invested in. And I loved her performance in this movie. And I love her dynamic with the kid in this movie, Spike, who is by far the best performance in this entire movie. If this kid does not get nominated for something, it would almost be like a crime. He was so great in this movie. Typically when I look at child performances and stuff, I'm not really a big fan of a lot of child performances. They're just never really all that convincing. They never really do much for me as a viewer. But in this movie, this kid, I'm going to put his name here because I can't remember his name right now. He has to be nominated for something. I don't think he's really been in much before this. This is a breakout role for him, and what a breakout role it is, because he done such an incredible job in this movie. I bought into his character, I bought into his story, I bought into his journey, and he was just incredible, especially in the more emotional scenes between his mum and his dad. Ralph Fiennes also done a really good job as well. I mean, he comes into the movie later on, but he does a pretty great job as well. And overall, the performances in this movie were just fantastic. Another thing I loved about this movie was the editing. I typically love a lot of Danny Boyle's editing, and this movie is no exception. I mean, the editing in this movie is very strange, it's very dreamlike, but I think it really worked and fit the tone of the movie. Can't say it always stuck the landing at every single point in the movie. I mean, there were certain editing choices I weren't a huge fan of, but for the most part, I did really like the editing in this movie. I feel like Danny Boyle's movies just have this like really dreamlike sense, and this movie feels like almost like the most dreamlike out of all of his movies. I thought Trainspotting 2 was pretty dreamlike at times, but this movie is super dreamlike. There's a lot of really weird imagery in this movie that doesn't always make the most sense, and it almost does feel like it's there so the critics can be like, how profound, you know? Like, it's almost like they can just sit there and like pick apart this movie, but in my opinion, not all the imagery doesn't always make sense in this movie, and it almost feels a little bit self-indulgent and a little bit pretentious at times. The way this movie's structured is it's really well structured, but it's also kind of strange. Like, the tone is very all over the place. At some points, it's a really serious, really gritty zombie movie. It's a really gritty, just zombie post-apocalyptic movie, and then other times it's a bit more juvenile and it's a bit more jokey, and these two tones, they don't always mesh that well, especially towards the end. The ending of this movie I fucking hated, but I'll get into that later. I won't spoil the ending, but I will talk more about that later. But for the most part, it does keep a pretty gritty tone, but there were times in this movie where it just felt tonally all over the place and it didn't always mesh. The middle part of the movie, they introduced a certain character who just doesn't really fit the tone of the movie, and he fit the tone at points, but he just felt a bit juvenile and a bit annoying, if I'm being honest. It's not like he completely ruined it. Like I said, he does fit the tone at times, but I don't know, man. Just there come out with certain lines that just felt really tonally off to me. And it felt like at times he kind of took away from like the main point of this movie, which is about the kid Spike. This kid is essentially going on a hero's journey. He's essentially going on this journey of finding his own path and doing his own things and realizing that he can't rely on his dad, who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. He can't rely on him to, like, carve the path for him. He kind of just has to find his own path in life, and I loved seeing that journey. So when this character comes along and kind of interrupts that, and then you have another character who comes along and also interrupts that, it does feel a little bit off-putting at times, and especially when they start getting jokey. Because 28 Days Later was like a very serious movie. It was a very grounded, very serious movie. Yeah, it had a few little jokes here and there, but ultimately it did keep that grounded tone. It was very grounded, very realistic, and it was essentially a movie about trying to find hope in a hopeless world. And then you had 28 Weeks Later, which was just as serious as the first movie, and it, again, had a pretty consistent tone. Say what you want about the movie, but it still had a pretty consistent tone. But this is the most tonally inconsistent out of all of them, and I think that's this movie's biggest flaw. You have these moments that are just these really intense action sequences that really put you in the driver's seat. It almost feels like you're there, like, fucking hell, like you're grabbing onto the edge of your seat, like, fucking hell, I've never seen zombies as terrifying as this. And then the next scene, it'll be like a character joking about something, and it just feels really off. I'm not saying jokes in a serious movie are necessarily bad, I'm just saying the delivery of the jokes just felt very tonally off to me. And the ending of this movie, I almost want to spoil I'm not going to spoil the ending, but the ending of this movie was so out of left field and so tonally off, where I was just like, what was that? It almost like, I wouldn't say it ruined the movie, but let's just say I'm not looking forward to the next movie if this is what it's going to be like. If the next movie is anything like the ending of this movie, then I'm not interested in watching the rest of this trilogy. I guess it's a trilogy. I'm pretty sure it got announced as a trilogy. I think this movie done a fantastic job at establishing how the infected have changed since the first movie, and they still establish them as a very reasonable threat. And this world as a whole, time might have, moved on, and, it might be a very long time and people might have adapted to live in this world. But let's just say things have not got any easier, and the infected are still very much a threat. And this movie does a fantastic job at establishing that. The first half of this movie, when it's just the dad and his son, it's fantastic. I love that whole sequence. It's the whole first half of the movie. They're just going through the mainland, and he's showing him how to survive on the mainland and stuff. And I love that. I thought that was really fantastic, because it just done such a great job at establishing the threat of the infected, showing how the infected have changed since 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. And just, I love the intensity of it all. It just felt very raw, very intense, very gritty. And when they went from the homeland, which was like their little island that they lived on, to the mainland, it really felt like a jump from, like, okay, familiarity, comfort, that's our place, to, okay, we're going into the land of the infected. This is their territory. This is the part of the world that they own. I love how this movie just keeps a consistent level of intensity. Even when it goes a bit tonally off, it does keep a level of intensity that is very present throughout the entire movie. And the infected are a persistent threat through this entire movie, because it would have been very easy for them to be like, oh yeah, here's the infected, we're just going to show them a lot, but not really understand what makes them scary or makes them like a real threat. But this movie, you can tell Danny Boyle understands that, no, this is how this type of infected should be represented in this universe, and he does a really good job at representing them and showing how dangerous they actually are, and he makes them feel just as much of a threat in this movie as they have been in the other two movies. And the way the infected are represented just led to some really great action sequences, like some really fantastic, edgy seat, raw and gritty action sequences that just was super memorable. Like, literally, like, there's loads of sequences in this movie that really stuck with me after the movie. One thing I wasn't really a big fan of, that some people might really like, and that's fair enough, but me personally, I just wasn't really a big fan of it, was the whole kill cam thing. It was really weird. So, for example, an infected would be killed in this movie. For example, they'll land a headshot on the infected with like an arrow or something, and then the infected would get hit, and then the whole movie would pause, and then you would see like a 360 camera type thing, and then the movie would just carry on, and then the infected would fall and die. And it was just really weird. It's just like, okay, I get it. He landed a headshot on the infected. I don't really know why we had to pause the whole movie, do some weird camera thing, and then established that the infected got shot. It's like, I get it. There'll be other times in a movie where it'll be like a quick kill or whatever, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So what was the point of that other kill cam type thing? I don't know. I just felt really off. Just didn't really feel like it fit in with the movie. Despite my complaints for 28 years later, I still had a really fun time with this movie. I thought it was a really fun time at the cinema. If you just want to see a raw, gritty zombie movie that has some underlying themes to make you think a little, you have a really good time with this movie. And overall, I thought it was a really good direct sequel from 28 Days Later, which I do actually have a question about 28 Weeks Later. Where does it fit in this universe? Because this movie barely mentions 28 Weeks Later, and a lot of the questions that were set up in 28 Weeks Later are not really answered in this movie at all. It's like they almost just don't exist. I don't know if 28 Weeks Later has been retconned. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't been, but this movie doesn't do anything to answer any of those questions set up in 28 Weeks Later. But what we do know is it is a direct sequel to 28 Days Later, and in that sense, it's actually a very good sequel to 28 Days Later, and I had a really good time with it. I'm going to give 28 Years Later an A-. So, 28 Years Later, have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also, how would you rank the 28 trilogy so far? Give me your ranking from worst to best, and let me know your opinions of each in the comment section down below. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.